Hi, welcome back for another episode of Roots Unearthed. Today we're going to be going through our thought process on how to find land, what factors to look for. So if you were looking for land to build, whether for your dream home or for your homestead or farm, hopefully some of the tools that we go over and some of the items that we'll bring up here are new to you or interesting, and you can ensure that you look at them before making any commitment on any piece of land. So first of all, the most important thing you need to figure out is, what do you want? What are you going to do? And I know that's a big open-ended question. We asked ourselves that in the beginning, and it's changed so much over the past 12 months as we were getting more and more into this mindset. And of course, there's things we want to explore. What do I mean by that? Well, we know we're going to be having chickens. We had chickens before. We're going to have an army of chickens this time. I would really like to get into pigs. I'd like to try pigs. Whether or not that's a big part of our land, but I'd like to use some of them to graze. But I'm also really interested in sheep. Whether I'm having a flock of 5 or a flock of 25 is a big difference. My wife would also like a milk cow. So 1 cow and 10 cows, all these are completely different land needs. So in our case, based on where we're looking for and what we can afford, we're looking in that 10 to 15 acre range. And I'll get to that. There are some advantages depending on where you're at on how much land you should buy. So for example, in North Carolina, in order to be classified as a farm, you need to have 10 acres. And that 10 acres has to be, I believe it's fenced in, and there's a 2 acre exclusion for your home. Although I've heard 1 acre as well, but if you're looking at buying 15 acres, once you have everything fenced in, you should be fine. If you're looking at forestry exemptions, I think it's 20 acres in North Carolina. There's a number of different things, and even from a license plate on your truck, you can have discounted plates if you have a farm truck license plate, which requires, I believe, 10 acres under management as well. So there's a lot to consider. And once you can kind of figure out what your plans are for the land, or maybe you're really open to a lot of different options, that's where you can, obviously start searching. You can start with your Zillow search, using the filters on your queries to whether it's 5 to 10 acres, 10 acres plus, etc. But I would also say really look at Craigslist and the for sale by owner on Zillow, because there's a lot of people who list land who don't want to spend 5 or 10% commission just to sell their land. And of course, driving around, right? We've found parcels by going to look at a parcel, and it opened the doors to new areas, and then after driving around we saw, oh, there's another sign for sale, let's look it up. The question is, how do you look up some of these properties that are for sale? How can you get a better idea of what the land is, what's on it, without a realtor or without it being on the MLS? So we're going to go through 2 really cool products out there, or services out there. The first is called Acrevalue, and the second is OnX Hunt, which OnX you may have heard of. I feel like it's been advertised a lot recently, and I actually didn't even think it was going to be useful until I saw one of the land realtors use it, and we've actually really embraced it. One of the tools that we found incredibly useful, especially being an out-of-town buyer or at least an out-of-town researcher, as we were, was something called Acrevalue. Now, Acrevalue, what you do is you type in an address, something that you found on Zillow, or maybe you drove by and saw a sign, anywhere you can get the address, type in 1 and click search. It's going to instantly show you all the parcel lines. And you can see owners' names, you can see a bunch of different information. And in this case, the property for sale was multiple parcels. So with Acrevalue, you can select all the parcels that you're interested in and click Get Full Report. Once that report generates, it's going to show you so much information. First of all, it's going to show you the total acreage amount here, which I have 35. The sales comps, unfortunately, is not included in the basic subscription. But the most important pieces here are the elevation. So as you can see, that this is a really flat lot. So this is all the same. The dark green is all the same elevation. Light green is, I think, 10 feet less, and so forth. And as you can see at the bottom, it starts to get much, much steeper. So the elevation goes from, the range is from 797 all the way up to 926 feet. So about 125 feet in difference between the top of the parcel and the bottom of the parcel. So when we look at the next tab here, we have soil, which I'll be honest, I don't know too much about this. This is more my wife's area, which she'll look at what type of soil it is. And of course, you will need to get a soil testing kit should you be really into growing a certain type of crop, or maybe planting in a certain area would be better than others. But that's a little more detail once you get into the property. But in my opinion, the most important thing to look at is the flood zone. Why is this property for sale? Why isn't anyone else using it? So as you can see, for this land, the majority of each parcel, you can see here 88.5% of the field, is minimal flood hazard, which is essentially not a flood zone. However, you can see that on each parcel here, the dark blue, there's 5.29 acres at flood zone, there's 0.7, and was it 1 acre of flood zone. So overall, you can definitely see there's a creek or stream that runs through here, and there's some low areas, and that's definitely something to be aware of. We once found a property that we thought was perfect. From the pictures, it looks great. And as soon as we pulled up Acrevalue, it hit us. The land was nice and flat, but about 20 feet in from the road, you had a creek going through. So you would have to build a bridge over that creek in order to access the rest of your land, which building a bridge for us is a deal breaker. It's not worth the additional expense to build the bridge, and especially that the price that they were asking was as if there was no major issues with that land. So we were very easily and quickly able to disregard that piece of property. Scrolling down here, you can see for the next is the crop history. This was mostly pasture, some forest, some non-crop land. In other fields or parcels, you will have seen where it's soybeans or corn and the rotation. The ownership, this is the current ownership of all the parcels here. And then going down to easements, in this case, it doesn't look like there's any known easements. The energy and renewables tab, kind of useless. It does show you though where the main transmission lines are, if that's something that you don't want to be close to whatsoever. And likewise with satellite imagery, you can go ahead and order a realistic, up-to-date satellite picture. However, in my opinion, I think they cost like $300. I would rather go and buy a drone for $400 and get my own aerial picture, especially because I can continue using the drone, and I really want a drone, so I think I can justify getting a drone. So maybe we'll have a drone in the next video. Anyways, that is Acrevalue. So once you found the parcel and it passed from the Acrevalue perspective, there's no flood zones that you can't deal with. The elevation looks buildable. The next step is to, of course, go and walk the land. That is the most important step. And not just once, multiple times. Whether you're walking in the middle of the day, you might want to walk it during rush hour. What are the streets like? What is the traffic like? Hopefully you're out in the country and there isn't much of either. But you won't know until you get out there. Other things to look at when you are walking around your land. What does the natural environment look like? Are plants thriving? What's growing well already? Are there mature trees? What does the ground look like? Is it compacted? Is it dry? Are there natural bodies of water? Are there signs of life on your property? And what does the soil look like? You can use Acrevalue, as we mentioned, to look up the soil makeup, but you still need to test for growing a garden later. So OnX Hunt is an app on your phone. It also exists in the computer, which is a GPS map. It overlays all the parcels. Its main use is for hunters, so they can look around and see who owns each land, and sometimes has contact information, I believe. So if you want to be called, or if you want to call someone, reach out to them so you can get permission to hunt in their land. But what I found to be very useful is when you're walking on these lots, some of them have not been recently surveyed. Some have, some haven't. So you're able to use your phone, and within reason, 10 or 15 feet, you can walk the boundaries of the lot. You can try to identify and even look for the different survey pins if there are differences, or distances between them. We thought OnX Hunt was incredibly useful, and so this is actually a parcel that we are interested in. and the owner has a clearing that, as you can see, it's all trees on the map that hasn't been updated from a satellite perspective. So I was able to, using OnX, track and walk along the entire outline of the clearing, which is this teal strip. And then using the tools on OnX, I was able to measure, so I had an idea of how much is cleared. And it's about 1.4 acres according to OnX on how much of this land is actually cleared. Now, for what we're going to do, we're going to need additional clearing, but that was something that we also looked at. Based on some plans that we have here, the green will be future clearing, and we can put the placement of the house. This dotted line here is where, if we do buy this land, is where we think we would put our home, based upon where the driveway and everything else is. A lot more on this in future videos, especially if we do go under contract for this land. That's going to be pretty much all of our content for the next few years. So we're really excited about this land, and you can see how useful OnX is. You can put different markers. In this case, I put a marker here which says tree. There's a really beautiful tree right in the middle of the opening, which will, I think I have a picture I can post of this, just so you can get an idea of what it looks like. Likewise, with this land, I was able to chart, here's the power post. So I have an idea, and I can use OnX to measure how far do I need to move power from the telephone pole all the way up to my build site. How much is that going to cost? What, all these factors I need to keep in mind. So OnX, super useful. We're going to continue using OnX as we develop our land, and eventually this satellite picture will update with the clearings, so it's only going to become more and more useful. OnX is incredibly affordable. I think it's $29 for the year, so it's absolutely worth it. And in my opinion, now that if we do find this land and we move forward, we won't need Acrevalue anymore. But OnX Hunt, I think we're going to continue to use for some time managing our land. So after you found the property and it passed all of our considerations on Acrevalue, it passed your walkthrough on OnX, and you've looked at boundary lines, there's no rusted cars sitting around. The next step, of course, is if you're going to make an offer, you definitely want to put some contingencies in there. You want to look to make sure it's contingent on a perk test. If you are going to build a home, you need a perk test. And what that is that's going to determine if you can put a septic system on the land, or if you have sewer, then of course you don't need that. That septic is really going to derive where your house can be, where your well can be, and really the whole development of your land is contingent upon that big factor. If you're buying land to not live on, then it's not as important. But I think from a resale perspective, with land especially, you definitely want to make sure it's perkable. Otherwise, the use will only ever be for livestock or crops. Other things to consider. We found a piece of land that passed all of our tests, and we thought it was great. And my wife decided to go look up on the sex offenders list. Sure enough, there was 2 or 3, actually living in the same house, oddly enough, sex offenders pretty much directly as our neighbor. So whether or not you are okay with that, whether you have children and you want to live next to an individual, that is completely a personal decision, but you need to keep in mind that will impact the value of your land should you decide to sell. And if you have small children, it's something to consider as well. Of course, school districts. Moving into the children aspect. School districts are also very important. Land is usually more expensive in better school districts, but it does give you an idea of what the area is like by looking at the district. And you may say, Nathan, I don't care. I don't care if it has no schools. My goal is to be out there in Homestead, and I'm going to homeschool my children, or I don't have children. That's absolutely fine, but just something to consider. We right now are homeschooling, but we wanted to be able to send our daughters to a high school or some sort of charter school. Should it become too much? You never know exactly what homeschooling is going to be like, and this is our first year. So we definitely wanted to have decent schools as a backup choice for us. Finally, one of the last things before you put your offer in is look at the county ordinances. And often they're huge, hundreds of pages, and hopefully they're searchable. Some of them are, but search. So for example, the land that we're interested in, I actually had a mini heart attack as I was reading through one of the ordinances, and it said you can have no more than 5 chickens in your flock. And I thought, are you kidding me? This is supposed to be unrestricted land. I ended up calling the township to clarify these ordinances, and they confirmed to me that I was not under their jurisdiction for this, even though I was still in their city or town for the post office. I would be ruled under county ordinances. So once again, then going in the county to look at their restriction levels. So you definitely want to know what you're getting into. Can you have pigs? How many can you have? Can you have cows? What can you do? What can't you do? Very important. Otherwise, you're investing a ton of money in the land and building a home with possible restrictions that you might not know about. Don't take anyone's word for it. Get it from the county. Get it in writing. That way you know for sure. Some other considerations, as we touched upon a little bit, were the tax exemptions. As I mentioned, North Carolina has a farm exemption, a forest exemption. There's voluntary agriculture zones that have certain benefits. There's probably something out there in the state or area you're looking at, and I don't know them too well. I'm starting to get into them, and some I know that we won't qualify for in the immediate future, but something to consider. So this is all the knowledge that we've gained over the past 9 months of land searching. Most of it being not in the state, and until recently, being in the state. But these tools, hands down, I'd recommend to anyone looking to buy land. Acrevalue and OnX, super useful to get so much more information on land. I hope this video was useful. Please stay tuned and subscribe. We have some really exciting announcements coming up about future land and what we're planning to do, but we just need everything to get settled before we can do that. And maybe I'll get a drone and show some cool pictures. We'll see. Once again, please comment, please subscribe. Hope this is useful. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.